It began with a whisper that echoed through Hollywood corridors like a ghost, one man's voice breaking through the silence of years. Harvey Weinstein, the fallen king of film, the man whose empire collapsed under the weight of his own darkness, allegedly uttered 7 words that stopped the entertainment world cold. "We got intimate," he said, about Meghan Markle. The phrase was like a grenade tossed into the glossy facade of celebrity perfection. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't part of a press statement. It slipped out, reportedly, during an unrecorded portion of a prison interview. But the moment it did, everything changed. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. People gasped. The internet froze. Newsrooms scrambled. Could it be true? Could Meghan Markle, now Duchess of Sussex, once have shared an intimate connection with one of Hollywood's most infamous figures? Or was this just another weapon in Weinstein's endless arsenal of manipulation? That's where our story begins. But to understand what this revelation could mean, you need to see the bigger picture. The way ambition, power, and silence often collide behind the red carpets and royal palaces. The way one man's truth can destroy another's carefully built illusion. So, let's strip back the curtain. Let's dive into the untold connection between a disgraced movie mogul and a woman who fought her way from obscurity to royalty. Because what Weinstein said that day wasn't just gossip. It was a spark that reignited one of Hollywood's most closely guarded mysteries. Imagine the scene. A gray prison room, the air thick with regret and disinfectant. The interviewer, nervous but determined, asks about the dozens of actresses who had crossed paths with Weinstein at the height of his power. He mentions familiar names. Then, quietly, the interviewer drops a name that no one expected, Meghan Markle. Weinstein pauses. A faint smile flickers. He leans forward, his voice dropping. "We got intimate," he murmurs. The room goes still. The guard outside the door glances in, uncertain. And somewhere, far from that cold interview room, a PR team in California feels a sudden, invisible earthquake. What did he mean by intimate? Was it emotional? Physical? Professional? Or was it something darker, a metaphor for the manipulation that fueled his empire? That single phrase set off a chain reaction. Former producers began whispering about old casting sessions. Assistants traded memories of brief encounters. Tabloids dug through old photo archives. And in a world obsessed with image and reputation, Meghan's meticulously polished brand, her rise from actress to duchess, from Hollywood to Windsor, suddenly trembled. But let's not jump ahead. Because before the Duchess, before the palace gates, before the billion-dollar deals, there was Rachel Meghan Markle, the aspiring actress hustling through the backstreets of Los Angeles. A woman with a dream and a determination sharp enough to cut through glass. And that's where the shadows begin. Before Meghan became a household name, she was just another face at the auditions, waiting, hoping, networking. Hollywood is a brutal place for dreamers. The system is built on whispers, favors, and access. For every actress who makes it, hundreds disappear. Meghan knew that. She'd seen it. She'd felt the sting of rejection more times than she could count. But what if someone offered her a shortcut? Someone like Harvey Weinstein, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood at the time. A man who could make or break a career with a single phone call. Back then, his name was currency. His parties were portals to fame. If you were an actress in the early 2000s and you got an invitation from Weinstein, it wasn't a suggestion, it was destiny calling. Rumors claim their paths crossed at a charity gala in Beverly Hills. Others say it was during a casting event for a small role in one of his productions. No one agrees on the exact date, but insiders agree on one thing. Meghan's name was on Weinstein's guest list more than once. The first time her name came up in his office, a former assistant allegedly laughed. "She's that girl from Deal or No Deal," the assistant said, referring to Meghan's brief stint as a suitcase model. Weinstein reportedly smirked. "Not for long," he replied. Now, pause for a moment. What did he mean by that? Was it simple confidence in her talent, or something else entirely? Because around that same time, Weinstein was notorious for what he called private meetings. The kind of meetings that weren't listed on call sheets or production schedules. Meetings that took place in hotel suites rather than offices. Meetings that dozens of women would later describe as the beginning of their nightmares. Could Meghan have been one of them? No one can say for certain. But when Weinstein uttered those words years later, The timing was chilling. He had nothing left to lose, no reputation to protect. He'd already been branded a monster. So why mention her? Why now? Some argue it was his final act of vengeance, a way to drag another powerful figure into his web. Others believe it was an attempt to reclaim relevance. But there's another theory, whispered among insiders, that Weinstein wanted to expose the hypocrisy of Hollywood's royalty. That he believed Meghan had built her empire on the same manipulative foundations he once ruled. And that theory might not be entirely far-fetched. Let's rewind. It's 2011. Meghan is in Toronto, filming Suits. Her career is rising, but not skyrocketing. She's beautiful, articulate, but not yet a star. Around that time, Weinstein is still hosting private dinners for rising actresses, investors, and media figures. His world is glitzy, dangerous, and intoxicating. One night, at an awards after-party, someone introduces Meghan to Weinstein. They shake hands. Cameras flash. To most, it's an ordinary moment, just another Hollywood greeting. But years later, that single photograph would resurface, igniting conspiracy theories that refused to die. Weinstein allegedly offered her a project, a small role in a film under development. Some claim she declined. Others say she attended a follow-up meeting that ended abruptly. The details are hazy, buried under NDAs and silence. But those who were there remember the tension. One producer later recalled, Harvey didn't like hearing no. He never forgot a rejection. That's where the story begins to twist. Because when someone with Weinstein's ego gets denied, it doesn't end there. He had a habit of reshaping narratives, turning rejection into revenge. And when Meghan's image transformed years later, when she became a royal, a global humanitarian, the face of grace and empathy, Weinstein, locked in his cell, must have watched the headlines and thought, she escaped the system I created. Maybe that's what "we got intimate" meant. A cruel reminder that, in his mind, everyone in Hollywood was part of his web. But here's where the mystery deepens. A few weeks after his alleged comment leaked, an anonymous insider claimed that Meghan's legal team reached out to a publication, urging them not to print Weinstein's quote. The reporter refused to comment. The story vanished. Websites that mentioned it mysteriously edited their articles overnight. The digital footprint shrank to nothing. And yet, as history shows, nothing ever truly disappears on the internet. Screenshots surfaced. Old tabloid drafts appeared on Reddit. Twitter threads re-emerged, dissecting every possible interpretation. The narrative spiraled out of control. Some saw it as defamation. Others saw it as confirmation of Hollywood's ugliest secrets. So what is the truth? Was there really an intimate relationship between the Duchess and the disgraced producer? Or just a metaphor twisted by desperation? Let's ask a harder question. Why is this story resurfacing now? Timing in media is never accidental. The leak came just as Meghan faced backlash over her new Netflix show, With Love, Meghan, and rumors of tension with production staff. Public sympathy was waning. Every scandal suddenly mattered again. And that's when Weinstein's alleged words hit the headlines, an echo from the past, colliding with her present. Coincidence? Or coordinated strike? Behind every scandal lies an agenda. Some say it's the media, desperate for clicks. Others whisper it's Hollywood's silent payback, a reminder that no one ever truly escapes their past. But there's another layer to this story, one darker than gossip and greed. Because if Weinstein's statement is real, it could mean more than just a personal scandal. It could unravel alliances, threaten royal reputations, and force old Hollywood players into the light. Remember, Weinstein didn't just know actresses. He knew networks, producers, investors, people with ties to politics and power. And according to whispers from inside the entertainment industry, he kept records, diaries, logs of his interactions, notes written in code, referencing projects, dates, and names. Some of those names, sources claim, match the very circles Meghan once navigated. If those records ever surface, the consequences could be seismic. Not just for Meghan, but for the entire royal narrative that rests on her transformation from actress to icon. And yet, even now, no one dares to confirm or deny. The silence speaks louder than any statement. When asked about Weinstein's alleged comment, Meghan's representatives simply responded, "We have no comment regarding the claims of a convicted criminal." But behind closed doors, insiders say there was panic. quiet calls, legal consultations, reputation management strategies rolled out overnight. It was damage control on royal scale. Because even if the story wasn't true, the perception could be devastating. Think about it. A duchess tied to one of Hollywood's darkest figures? Even by rumor alone, it feeds every narrative her critics ever pushed. Ambition, manipulation, the blurred line between survival and strategy. And that's what makes this story so dangerous. It doesn't need proof to destroy, it just needs curiosity. Because once people start asking questions, the internet does the rest. But what if there's more? What if Weinstein wasn't just lashing out? What if he really had something to back up his claim? Something that connects the Duchess to a chapter of Hollywood history she thought she'd buried forever. Because there's one detail that hasn't been widely reported yet. A mysterious letter allegedly found among Weinstein's old possessions during a property search. Handwritten, no signature, but inside, the words, "Thank you for believing in me. You saw potential when others didn't." The letter was addressed simply to H. Coincidence? Or confession? Authorities never released the letter publicly, but a guard who handled evidence reportedly mentioned it to a journalist before retracting the statement. And that's the thing about truth. It has a way of clawing its way back, no matter how deeply it's buried. As this story unfolds, one fact becomes clear. Weinstein's statement isn't the end of something. It's the beginning. The first ripple of a much larger wave. Because every powerful woman who's ever crossed paths with Hollywood's most notorious producer carries a shadow. Some shadows are faint. Others still reach across oceans. And as the Duchess's empire faces scrutiny once again, from Netflix deals to political ambitions, this revelation couldn't have come at a worse time. The timing feels surgical, deliberate. Almost like someone wanted the world to remember that Meghan Markle didn't start her story in a palace, but in the same ruthless Hollywood that Harvey Weinstein once ruled. Maybe it's all coincidence. Maybe it's manipulation. Or maybe, just maybe, the truth is somewhere in between. One thing is certain, Weinstein's words have reopened a door that many wanted permanently sealed. And as whispers turn into headlines, and headlines turn into investigations, we're left with one haunting question. What else did he know? Because if there's one thing about Harvey Weinstein, it's that he never spoke without purpose. Every statement, every leak, every word he uttered served a function. And this might be his final act of chaos. But if you think his "we got intimate" remark was the most shocking part, think again. What came next, what insiders claim to have uncovered from that interview room, would flip this entire story upside down. And no one, absolutely no one, saw it coming. It all started with a sound that didn't belong in that room. A pause. A silence so dense it seemed to press against the walls, swallowing the hum of the air conditioner and the scuff of the guard's shoes. Harvey Weinstein leaned forward across the steel table, his cuffs rattling against the chain that held them. He looked tired, swollen, but his eyes still carried that glimmer, the one that used to make people tremble. And then, as if he were simply talking about a weather report, he said it. "We got intimate." The interviewer froze. It wasn't just the words. It was the casual way he dropped them, as if they were meaningless. But they weren't. Because the name that had come right before those words wasn't one you expected to hear in that cold prison room. It wasn't an actress still struggling to recover from his shadow. It wasn't a victim listed in a court transcript. It was Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. The reporter stuttered. "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Weinstein just smiled. That knowing, venomous smile that used to control studios and terrify publicists. "You heard me," he said softly. "We got intimate." She knows. For a moment, the interviewer thought he was joking. But there was no humor in Weinstein's face. The smirk vanished. What remained was something more unsettling. Regret mixed with arrogance. A confession disguised as a warning. Within days, that quote began circulating through underground media channels. Someone leaked fragments of the interview to a tabloid editor who had long been blacklisted by Hollywood. Within hours, the editor's inbox was flooded with messages, some threatening legal action, others offering money for exclusivity. The leak spread like a virus. But before the full tape could ever air, it vanished. Wiped. Suppressed. A cease and desist followed. Too late. By then, the damage was already done. Hollywood thrives on whispers. Before long, those whispers reached royal ears. The idea that Meghan Markle, the world's most discussed duchess, had been mentioned by Harvey Weinstein wasn't just salacious. It was dangerous. So what really happened? That's what we're going to unravel right now. Because this isn't just about a quote. It's about a history of power, manipulation, and reputation. About two people who climbed the same ladder, but on opposite sides of morality. One, a predator who used fame to dominate. The other, an actress who used charm to ascend. And when their worlds collided, the fallout was inevitable. Let's rewind to that prison interview. Sources inside the facility say it wasn't supposed to happen at all. Weinstein's team had fought for years to keep him silent, to prevent another public scandal from erupting. But isolation does strange things to a man like him. The empire was gone, the money evaporated, the enablers scattered. All he had left was his voice, and the twisted pleasure of reminding the world that he'd once been untouchable. The journalist conducting the interview was new, hungry, and reckless. She asked the question no one else dared to. Do you regret how you treated women in Hollywood? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he smirked. Regret, he said. Everyone regrets when they lose. I didn't lose because I was evil. I lost because they turned on me. She pressed on. What about the actresses who accused you? Are you saying they're lying? Weinstein leaned closer. You think all of them were saints? You think this industry runs on purity? They all knew the game. Some played it better than others. It was then, the journalist later claimed, that he dropped Meghan's name. She played it best, he muttered. We got intimate, not how you think. She understood what power really meant. She knew how to use it. Look where she is now. The interviewer didn't understand at first. Intimate, she repeated. You mean you were close? Weinstein chuckled. Closer than the public knows. But she's smart. Smarter than most. The interview ended shortly after. But the damage, the implication, was irreversible. Think about it. Weinstein had spent decades manipulating headlines. Every word he released was calculated. So why mention Meghan at all? She was safe in Montecito, oceans away from his prison cell, her royal title intact. Unless he knew the mention would sting. Unless it was designed to drag her back into a world she'd tried so hard to escape. Because if there's one thing Hollywood never forgives, it's the person who walks away and pretends they were above it all. When news of the quote began to bubble online, the response was instant. Meghan's PR team reportedly flooded media outlets with legal notices, calling the statement fabricated and malicious. But interestingly, they never addressed the core question. Had she ever met Weinstein? Instead, silence. And silence, in this business, is louder than denial. Behind the scenes, things got messy. A former associate of Weinstein's claimed the mogul had once hosted a private dinner in 2013, where Meghan was an invited guest. At the time, she was filming Suits, already carving out a reputation for her networking charm. The dinner allegedly included several actresses, investors, and industry executives. Nothing about it was scandalous until now. If true, that dinner could have been the spark. A fleeting connection between two people who both understood the currency of attention. But what if it was more than that? A studio intern later told a friend, who told a blog, that Weinstein often kept notes about guests who impressed him. The intern remembered seeing Meghan's name on one of those lists. He wrote something next to it, the source said. Something like, knows how to read a room. He liked that. Now, does that mean anything happened between them? Not necessarily. But in Weinstein's world, compliments were currency. And intimacy wasn't always physical. Sometimes, it was psychological, the understanding between two people chasing the same spotlight. Still, Weinstein's phrasing, we got intimate, was deliberate. He could have said, we met, we worked together, or I knew her. But he didn't. He chose the word that would guarantee chaos. Because deep down, even locked away, Weinstein remains a manipulator. He knows how to dangle ambiguity like bait. He knows how to make people fill in the blanks. And Hollywood, ever addicted to scandal, did exactly that. In the days following the leak, old photos of Meghan at red carpet events resurfaced. People began comparing her early career appearances with Weinstein's known haunts. Social media users tracked timelines, locations, and guest lists, trying to piece together an invisible puzzle. One Reddit thread even claimed to have spotted Meghan in the background of a Weinstein-hosted afterparty in 2011. The photo is blurry, inconclusive, but that didn't stop the wildfire. Then came the strangest twist. A journalist from London claimed to have received an anonymous email containing a single sentence. Check the tapes from the 2013 charity dinner. The sender's IP address traced back to New York City, the same city where Weinstein's legal team once operated. The journalist tried to follow the lead. Within a week, her email account was hacked. Coincidence? Maybe. But you see, in stories like this, coincidences tend to multiply. Let's step back for a moment. Why does this story matter? Why should anyone care about what a disgraced producer muttered behind bars? Because in the world of power and image, perception is everything. And for Meghan Markle, image is her empire. Her transformation from Hollywood hopeful to royal humanitarian is her brand. The moment that brand gets tied, even by rumor, to a man like Weinstein, the foundation trembles. It's not about guilt or innocence. It's about association. In politics, in Hollywood, in royalty, association can kill careers faster than scandal. One whisper, one headline, one quote. So when Weinstein's words escaped the walls of his cell, people close to Meghan reportedly panicked. According to an insider familiar with her team, a crisis call was scheduled within hours. Lawyers, agents, and publicists discussed narrative redirection. The instruction was clear: shift focus. Flood the press with positive coverage. Control the algorithm before the algorithm controls her. And yet, the whispers persisted. You see, the human mind loves contradiction. The idea that the Duchess, symbol of refinement, humanitarian causes, royal grace, might have once been entangled, even peripherally, with Hollywood's darkest figure, it's irresistible. And that's exactly why Weinstein said it. He knew it would sting. He knew it would trend. He knew it would make her team scramble. For a man stripped of power, it was the last card he could play, his voice. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. According to one prison guard who overheard the interview, Weinstein didn't stop there. After the cameras cut, after the journalist packed her recorder, he allegedly leaned back in his chair and muttered to himself, "She's not who they think she is. None of them are." What did that mean? Was he hinting at something deeper, some unseen alliance, some hidden truth? Or was it just the bitter rambling of a fallen king, trying to poison everyone on his way down? No one knows. But what followed would only thicken the mystery. Within 48 hours of that statement surfacing online, a Hollywood archivist reportedly received a cease and desist from a third-party legal entity, warning against releasing unauthorized materials connected to Weinstein's personal records. The archivist refused to confirm what those materials were, but he did say this: if the public ever saw what's in those boxes, half of Hollywood would never sleep again. Now ask yourself, was Meghan's name one of those materials? The coincidences stack too neatly. The silence too calculated. And that's what keeps people watching. Weinstein's confession wasn't just about personal intimacy. It was about systemic intimacy. The tangled relationship between power and ambition. Between the abuser and the system that enabled him. And maybe, between those who claimed to escape it and those who never truly did. But the question that lingers like smoke is this: did Meghan truly know Weinstein beyond the surface? Did she sense the darkness behind his smile? Or was she just another face that passed through his empire of illusions, unaware of the storm brewing behind her? Either way, his words have carved her name into a chapter she never wanted reopened. And yet, it's only the beginning. Because hidden beneath the noise, there are whispers of a deeper link, a trail of messages, meetings, and maybe even evidence that never made it to court. And what happens when those whispers start finding their way into daylight? That's where we're heading next. Because if Chapter 1 showed us the confession, Chapter 2 will reveal how that connection began, where Hollywood's glamour met the hunger of ambition. And what came next would change everything. Because once Meghan entered Weinstein's orbit, even briefly, nothing was ever the same again. Before the Duchess. Before the designer gowns and palace gates. Before the Netflix deals and the global controversies. There was Meghan Markle. Just another face in a crowd of dreamers clutching headshots and hope. Hollywood didn't care about last names. It cared about access, connections, timing. And Meghan? She was determined to make her own. Picture it. Early 2000s Los Angeles. The air was thick with smog and ambition. Everyone had a script, a contact, a dream. Meghan worked the circuit like a chess player. Poised, strategic, always thinking 3 moves ahead. She wasn't the type to wait for opportunity. She chased it. And that hunger, that persistence, is exactly what made her stand out. But Hollywood isn't kind to persistence. It's a world of closed doors and unspoken rules. And it rewards one thing above all else: usefulness. Meghan learned that fast. In those early years, she bounced between auditions for commercials, background roles, and small television gigs. She did product endorsements that barely paid for gas. There were nights she went home wondering if she'd ever make it out of the endless cycle of "thank you, we'll be in touch." But even then, she carried herself like someone destined for more. People noticed that. A casting director once told a friend, she had this way of walking into a room that said, "I'm supposed to be here." Not many unknowns can pull that off. Still, the industry is unforgiving. For every door that opened, 3 more slammed shut. And that's when she began learning the other side of Hollywood. The dinners, the private meetings, the whispered offers that came with unspoken conditions. The city ran on secrets. Everyone knew about Harvey Weinstein long before his downfall. The rumors weren't just rumors. They were warnings disguised as gossip. And yet, people kept showing up to his events. Because if you wanted to make it big, you had to be seen in those rooms. That's the contradiction at the heart of Hollywood. Everyone despises the system, but everyone still plays the game. Around 2005, Meghan started landing minor parts, one-line roles, blink and you'll miss it appearances. General Hospital, Century City, cuts. They weren't glamorous, but they were steps. Each one a small climb up an impossible mountain. She learned to network like a pro. Her charm wasn't loud or forced. It was controlled, practiced, magnetic. But behind that smile, there was calculation. Every handshake mattered. Every introduction could be a ladder. And then came her brief appearance on Deal or No Deal. For millions watching, she was just one of the girls holding a silver case. But for Meghan, it was exposure. Camera time. A platform. She didn't stay long, but she made an impression. The producers remembered her professionalism and her quiet curiosity about the people behind the cameras, not just in front of them. That's how Meghan moved. She always looked past the obvious. While other models were focused on being seen, she was focused on being remembered. One night, after a taping, a producer introduced her to a mid-level studio executive connected to Weinstein's circle. The conversation was brief: compliments, laughter, business cards. But it planted a seed. That same executive would later attend a Weinstein Company event and mention Meghan's name in passing. Harvey, according to multiple accounts, asked, "Who is she?" It wasn't unusual for him to take interest in new talent. He was constantly scouting actresses he thought could bring both beauty and controversy to his projects. Meghan fit the mold: articulate, attractive, ambitious, and relatively unknown. The kind of person he could discover and then control. The first alleged meeting between Meghan and Weinstein remains wrapped in mystery. Some say it happened in Beverly Hills at a charity gala. Others insist it was in New York during a networking mixer for young actresses. The truth lies somewhere in the blur of champagne and opportunity. But every version of the story agrees on one thing: he noticed her. A former assistant recalled overhearing Weinstein's team talking about Meghan after an event. He liked her energy, the assistant said. He said she was the kind of woman who could charm a room without trying. That was a compliment and a warning, because Harvey didn't admire people he couldn't use. Now, Meghan wasn't naive. She'd heard the stories. She knew his reputation. But in Hollywood, lines blur. Rumors become currency. What's whispered in one room becomes a headline in another. And Meghan understood that perception mattered more than truth. So she navigated carefully. Never too close, never too distant. She showed up at the right parties, posed for the right photos, but never lingered long enough to be caught in the wrong conversation. It was a delicate dance. But even the best dancers slip. There's a story, unverified but persistent, about a dinner that changed everything. Weinstein was hosting a private gathering at the Beverly Hilton. A mix of producers, investors, and up-and-coming actresses. Meghan's name appeared on the guest list. Some say she was invited by a friend of a friend. Others that Weinstein himself extended the invitation after spotting her in Toronto during early pre-production for a film. She arrived late, wearing a black dress, understated but elegant. Weinstein, always the showman, greeted her personally. "You made it," he allegedly said. "I've heard good things." Throughout the night, they spoke briefly. Small talk, career aspirations, film ideas. Nothing scandalous on the surface. But people who saw them together noticed something, a flicker of tension, admiration mixed with caution. She smiled politely, laughed at his jokes, but never gave him more than what was necessary. One attendee later said, she knew exactly what he was. You could tell, but she also knew how to play the room. That was Meghan's gift. She could be charming without surrendering, confident without overstepping. But that kind of control can be dangerous in Hollywood, because it threatens men who thrive on dominance. Weinstein liked control. He liked when people bent. Meghan didn't. And that, reportedly, left an impression. From that night on, her name lingered around his offices. Not because she was a victim, but because she was one of the few who didn't play by his rules. And in Harvey's world, defiance was a provocation. Months later, according to one former assistant, he mentioned her again during a meeting. She's clever, he said. Too clever. But she'll learn. That line, more than anything, captures the unease between them. Two people who understood power, testing each other's boundaries. Now, fast forward a few years. Meghan's career finally gains traction with Suits. She's confident, stylish, visible. But as fame grows, so does curiosity. The media starts digging into her past, looking for skeletons. Old acquaintances get phone calls. Former colleagues get offers for exclusive stories. Most stay quiet. A few don't. One photographer recalls seeing her at an event that Weinstein also attended around 2014. They weren't together, he said. But when she walked by him, he smiled. She didn't look back. Was that avoidance or awareness? No one can say. But that single image, him smirking, her walking away, would later resurface online, feeding theories that their history ran deeper than anyone admitted. And maybe it did, because soon after that event, Weinstein allegedly made a remark during a meeting with another actress. She played it right, he said cryptically. Not every woman has that kind of discipline. To the cynical ear, it sounded like admiration. To the knowing one, it sounded like resentment. So what was Meghan's secret during those hidden years? How did she move through the same minefield that destroyed so many others and emerge unscathed? Some say she had help, mentors, insiders who warned her when to stay away and when to be seen. Others think it was sheer instinct, that she understood power dynamics better than anyone realized. She once told an interviewer years before her royal life, "You have to know your worth, even when others don't." At the time, it sounded like motivational fluff. But in hindsight, it reads like survival. Because knowing your worth in Hollywood isn't about self-esteem, it's about boundaries. It's about saying no when yes could make you famous. And maybe that's what angered Weinstein most. Maybe that's why, all these years later, he mentioned her. Not because of what happened between them, but because of what didn't. To a man like him, control was currency. Meghan took that away from him the moment she refused to play the part he expected. Still, he never forgot. Power-hungry men rarely do. And now, from the confines of his cell, he's rewriting his narrative, dragging names from his past into his downfall, weaving them into his confessions. Because even in disgrace, he craves relevance. But if Weinstein was trying to expose hypocrisy, he may have done more than he intended. Because his words have reignited old questions about Meghan's Hollywood climb, her strategic alliances, and the things she left behind when she traded the spotlight for a crown. And those questions are spreading. Former insiders are speaking again. Photos are resurfacing. And a certain email, long thought deleted, may hold the next clue to what really connected the Duchess and the disgraced mogul. Because just when Meghan thought she'd buried her Hollywood past, a single digital trail may prove otherwise. And what's written in that email could shatter everything. But that's where we go next. Because after the dinners, the smiles, the cautious distance, came the moment that changed her career forever. A message sent late at night, under an alias, from a name that would later vanish from her contacts. And when investigators found it years later, one phrase stood out like a scar. 3 words. Simple, chilling, unmistakable. You owe me. What came next would pull everyone back into the shadows, and not even the royal title could protect her from what that message would expose. The lights at the Beverly Hilton always seemed to hum with secrets. Celebrities drifted in and out of its marble halls, smiling for cameras they secretly despised, pretending their lives weren't quietly falling apart beneath the glitter. On the surface, it was Hollywood's temple of glamour. But for those who knew, it was a hunting ground where reputations were made, careers were destroyed, and deals weren't signed. They were sealed with whispers over champagne. On one humid night in late spring, the kind of night when Los Angeles smells of money and rain, a dinner invitation went out to a handful of rising stars. The host, Harvey Weinstein. The venue, a private suite inside the Beverly Hilton, reserved under one of his aliases. The reason? Celebrating new talent. Those were the exact words on the invitation card. Polished, vague, and dangerous. Among the invitees was Meghan Markle. At that time, she wasn't a duchess. She wasn't even a household name. She was an actress from a cable show with modest success, known more for her charm than her fame. She had just started gaining traction with Suits, but she still stood on the fragile bridge between anonymity and stardom. And Harvey Weinstein loved people who stood on bridges, because he could decide which side they landed on. She arrived late, as always calculated. A fitted black dress, minimalist jewelry, perfect posture. Enough to be noticed, but not enough to appear desperate. She knew the rhythm of these events. Arrive just late enough to draw attention, just early enough to seem in control. She wasn't there to blend in. She was there to observe. Inside, the atmosphere was electric and oppressive at the same time. The room smelled like perfume and expensive deceit. Waiters glided between velvet chairs, refilling glasses before they were empty. Weinstein sat at the head of the table, larger than life, radiating the confidence of a man who believed he owned the night. Around him, stars in various stages of success clung to his orbit, laughing too hard, agreeing too quickly. When Meghan entered, the room shifted, not dramatically, but perceptibly. A few heads turned. Weinstein noticed. "You made it," he said, his voice thick with that mix of charm and threat he used like a signature. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I didn't want to miss the opportunity," Meghan replied, offering a small smile that revealed nothing. Weinstein gestured to a seat near him. "Sit. I like ambition." It wasn't a request. It was a test. The conversations at that dinner were a performance, half networking, half psychological warfare. Harvey probed, flattered, interrupted. He quizzed people on film trivia, laughed too loud, told stories where he was always the hero. Meghan mostly listened. When she spoke with precision. When others bragged, she asked questions. When Weinstein tried to dominate the room, she didn't flinch. That unnerved him. Halfway through the meal, as dessert arrived, he leaned closer. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Who?" she asked. "Someone who knew how to play this town. You know how to make people want to listen." She gave a polite nod. "That's kind of you." "No," he said, lowering his voice. "It's dangerous." For a moment, their eyes locked. And for the first time, Weinstein saw something he wasn't used to seeing, a woman who didn't need him. That irritated him. From across the table, an actress whispered to another, "She's fearless." Maybe she was. Or maybe she was just better at pretending than anyone else in the room. As the evening dragged on, the guests began drifting toward the private lounge area adjoining the suite. Music replaced conversation. Deals turned into innuendo. Weinstein's attention moved between actresses like a spotlight, always searching for weakness. When he finally turned back to Meghan, he invited her for a quick chat. It was a familiar script. Every woman in that room knew what those words meant. "Of course," she said calmly, though her heartbeat quickened. She followed him toward the lounge. The door closed behind them. Inside, the lights were dimmer. A grand piano stood in the corner, and used. Weinstein poured 2 glasses of wine. "You've got something," he said. "Presence. You could be more than just another pretty face on a cable show." "I appreciate that," Meghan said, her tone steady. He stepped closer. "I can help you get there." Her fingers tightened around the glass. "I'm sure you can. Not if you keep acting like you don't need help," he added. "This business rewards those who know how to collaborate." The word lingered like smoke. She looked him straight in the eye. "I collaborate when there's mutual respect." For a long, tense moment, neither spoke. Weinstein's smile faltered. He wasn't used to pushback, especially not from women who still needed him. Finally, he laughed, a forced, hollow sound. "You're tough. I like that. You'll go far." She finished her wine, set down the glass, and said quietly, "I intend to." Then she walked out. The next day, according to an assistant who handled Weinstein's schedule, he canceled all follow-up meetings with her. "She's not what I expected," he reportedly told his staff. She's smart, too smart. That might have been the end of it. But in Hollywood, stories don't die, they evolve. And what happened that night didn't disappear. It lingered, whispered through corridors, misremembered, embellished. Some said she'd rejected his advances. Others claimed he'd never forgiven her for it. And years later, when he was cornered by disgrace and locked away from his empire, maybe that's why her name resurfaced. Maybe his "we got intimate" line wasn't about passion, but about power. Because power was the only intimacy Harvey Weinstein ever understood. Still, not everyone believes she walked away untouched. A former event planner for the hotel claimed Weinstein had requested security footage from that evening to be handled discreetly. The footage, allegedly showing Meghan leaving the suite before the dinner officially ended, was never archived properly. No one knows who took it. Another source, a caterer who'd worked that night, said, "There was something strange after she left. Harvey looked furious, but he was smiling. That's when you knew he'd lost control." And losing control was the one thing Harvey couldn't forgive. From that night forward, their paths diverged, but never fully separated. Her name would occasionally pop up in his correspondence. Short notes, scribbles, nothing incriminating, but enough to suggest she lived rent-free in his mind. He admired her defiance, even as it bruised his ego. Years later, when Meghan's relationship with Prince Harry dominated headlines, Weinstein's inner circle noticed something chilling. He'd bring her up sometimes, one associate revealed. He'd say, "She figured it out. She got out before the system ate her alive." Was that bitterness or respect? No one could tell. But the comment that followed left everyone uneasy. "She learned from the best," he said. The best. That was how he referred to himself. And that brings us to the theory that's haunted this story ever since. That maybe Weinstein's claim of intimacy wasn't physical, but ideological. That in his warped mind, anyone who played the system successfully owed him a debt. That his "we got intimate" remark was his way of reclaiming power over a woman who denied him the one thing he couldn't stand to lose: control. But what if it was more than that? What if there was proof, some trace of their encounter that didn't vanish with time? A few years after that dinner, an email surfaced during an internal Weinstein Company audit. It was flagged for deletion but never confirmed as erased. The sender's name was redacted, but the signature at the bottom was a single letter, M. The message read, "Thank you for your time last night. I appreciate your honesty." No one knows who wrote it. No one knows who received it. But the timestamp matched the morning after the Beverly Hilton dinner. Coincidence or connection? When investigators later asked Weinstein about it, he denied everything. "I don't know who that is," he said. "I met thousands of people. Don't make it something it's not." But prison changes people. And when he later muttered, "We got intimate," years after denying any relationship, the contradiction was too glaring to ignore. Maybe he was lying then. Maybe he was lying now. Or maybe he was telling a version of the truth no one wanted to hear. Because that night at the Beverly Hilton, something happened. Not necessarily scandalous, but significant. Two people, one at the height of power, the other on the edge of greatness, crossed paths in a moment that neither would ever fully escape. And though Meghan left that dinner with her dignity intact, the memory lingered. For Harvey, it became a wound he couldn't heal. For Meghan, it became a secret she couldn't acknowledge. But secrets in Hollywood never stay buried. Because just as Meghan began to ascend, landing endorsements, stepping into elite circles, preparing for the royal transformation, a quiet threat reappeared. Someone had been digging. Someone who claimed to have kept records from that night. Photos, messages, names. And one of those files, buried under layers of sealed evidence, reportedly contained a recording. A recording Weinstein allegedly kept for leverage. The contents of that recording remain unknown. But insiders whisper it could reveal the truth about what really happened in that suite. Who said what, who walked away, and who tried to make sure the world never found out. Because that dinner wasn't just a dinner. It was a prelude. A prelude to a storm that would circle back years later, when one of its participants traded Hollywood for Buckingham Palace, and the other traded a mansion for a cell. And if that recording ever surfaces, it could blow apart every narrative, every carefully crafted image, every denial. Because sometimes, power doesn't disappear, it just changes hands. And what that recording might reveal next could shatter both worlds. It's one thing to hear a rumor whispered through the corridors of Hollywood. It's another to realize that somewhere, deep inside an archive or an evidence box, there may exist a recording, a fragment of truth capable of destroying lives. And that's exactly what investigators whispered about after Weinstein's empire collapsed. Among the mountains of seized hard drives, encrypted files, and forgotten devices, there were murmurs of a lost tape. A recording that was never entered into evidence. A recording that, according to a handful of insiders, featured Meghan Markle. Now, before we go any further, understand something about Weinstein. He was obsessed with documentation. He recorded everything. Meetings, calls, conversations. Some said it was paranoia. Others said it was leverage. Harvey didn't trust memory, one former assistant revealed. He trusted playback. So when prosecutors raided his offices, it wasn't just contracts and NDAs they were looking for. They were looking for his secret vault. And when they found it, it changed everything. Hundreds of hours of tapes, stored on encrypted drives. Some labeled, some not. Names scribbled on sticky notes. Timestamps, hotel names, initials. It was like discovering a blueprint of Hollywood's hidden machinery. But one file stood out. It was listed under an innocuous title, Dinner BH. The date matched the night of the now infamous Beverly Hilton dinner. And inside Weinstein's internal folder system, that label sat adjacent to others marked with actress names, meeting locations, and film titles. But this one was blank. No description, no backup, just a single corrupted file. The team tried to open it. Nothing. The file was damaged, partially erased. But its metadata was intact, and the timestamps aligned perfectly with the duration of that dinner. For months, the file sat buried in the evidence logs, until a junior investigator, curious about the incomplete entry, flagged it in a report. That report, leaked years later, revealed the file's existence, and sparked a wave of speculation that has never stopped. Was Meghan on that tape? Some say yes, that the tape captured a portion of Weinstein's private lounge conversation, the same one where he allegedly tried to mentor her. Others say it was a recording of the entire dinner, a surveillance-style sweep that picked up laughter, wine glasses, and quiet exchanges. Either way, if it ever saw the light of day, it could change everything. A former Weinstein Company IT technician spoke anonymously to an investigative journalist. "I handled the audio archives," he said. "There were recordings he kept that weren't for production, weren't for business. They were trophies. He liked to have reminders of moments when he thought he'd won. But what if, that night, he hadn't won at all? What if the recording captured his failure, the moment Meghan walked out of that suite? Wouldn't that explain why it never surfaced in court? Because remember, Weinstein's downfall wasn't clean. Evidence went missing. Files were destroyed. Devices disappeared between seizure and submission. Some say the missing material was protected, traded, or buried by people with a lot to lose. And in that chaos, a file like Dinner BH could easily vanish. Except it didn't vanish completely. Its ghost remains, referenced in logs, whispered about by those who've seen too much. One former investigator said, "It's there. Maybe not the full thing, but fragments. You can hear his voice, low and slurred. You can hear someone else, female, composed. But it's short. 20 seconds, maybe. Then static. 20 seconds. Enough to spark a global fire. Because if Meghan's voice is even faintly present in those 20 seconds, it rewrites her Hollywood history. It connects her name to a scandal she's fought her entire career to avoid. But that's not the only mystery. There's also the matter of the Echo file, a duplicate discovered on an old drive belonging to Weinstein's former aide. This copy was slightly longer, 34 seconds, but the audio was encrypted. When technicians tried to decode it, they recovered a handful of muffled phrases. 2 words stood out clearly: mutual respect. Those were Meghan's exact words, as recalled by a witness from the dinner. The same phrase she reportedly used to push back against Weinstein's veiled offer. "I collaborate when there's mutual respect." If that's what the tape captured, then it's not evidence of wrongdoing. It's evidence of defiance. But here's the problem. Context doesn't survive without control. If that recording were to leak now, cut, edited, manipulated, the narrative could be anything. And in the modern world, perception becomes reality faster than truth can catch up. That's why Meghan's legal team, according to sources close to her camp, went into overdrive the moment the tape was mentioned. quiet phone calls, private meetings with journalists, cease and desist letters sent before any article was even published. One former publicist said, "They knew what this could do, not because it proved anything, but because it didn't." People would fill in the blanks. Meanwhile, those blanks became playgrounds for conspiracy. Was the recording real? Was it destroyed? Did Weinstein keep a backup, hidden somewhere only he knew? Then came the strangest twist yet. A few months after Weinstein's conviction, an anonymous file appeared on an encrypted sharing site used by journalists and activists. It was titled dinner_bh_fragment.mp3. Within hours, it was deleted. But not before a few users downloaded it. Those who claimed to have heard it describe it the same way. A faint clink of glasses, muffled conversation, then Weinstein's unmistakable voice, booming, smug. "You'll go far if you learn to listen," he says. A woman's voice responds, calm but firm. "I listen to myself." Then static. If authentic, it's the perfect metaphor for everything that followed. A battle between control and independence, exploitation and self-preservation. But without verification, it's just noise. Still, the timing was uncanny. The leak came just days before Meghan's high-profile documentary premiere. Coincidence? Hardly. Someone wanted her distracted. Someone wanted the world to remember. But here's where things take an even darker turn. A former prosecutor involved in Weinstein's case revealed off the record that certain tapes had been classified as non-evidentiary due to third-party sensitivities. Translation: they contained people too powerful, too connected, or too protected to expose. When asked if Meghan's name appeared in any of those files, the prosecutor refused to answer. "Let's just say there were surprises," he said. So the question remains, what was on that recording? Some say it was harmless. Others claim it contained a conversation that revealed more about Hollywood's hidden power structures than anyone wanted to admit. There's even a theory that the tape was intentionally corrupted, not by accident, but by order. Destroyed before trial to protect not just Meghan, but others connected to her. Executives, producers, royals. Because think about it. If a duchess's name appeared in a criminal investigation, even tangentially, the scandal wouldn't just touch Hollywood. It would reach Buckingham Palace. And that's exactly what might have happened behind closed doors. Rumors suggest British intermediaries quietly intervened during Weinstein's legal turmoil. Nothing official, no paper trail. But a few journalists noticed that certain stories linking Meghan to Weinstein were pulled from UK publications overnight. Entire segments scrubbed, archives rewritten. That kind of cleanup doesn't happen without power. So what if the tape wasn't just erased, it was bought? A journalist once claimed she'd been offered $400,000 for a copy of Dinner BH. She refused. Weeks later, she received a legal notice accusing her of unauthorized possession of private material. She hadn't even said yes. The game was clear, silence by intimidation. And yet, despite all the suppression, the story refuses to die. The more it's buried, the louder it whispers. Because somewhere, in a vault, in a server, or in a forgotten cloud drive, that recording might still exist. And here's the most haunting possibility. Maybe Weinstein wasn't bluffing when he said, "We got intimate." Maybe, to him, that moment, her defiance, her resistance, was the intimacy he craved. The connection he couldn't own but never forgot. To a predator, even rejection can become obsession. And to a woman who's built her life on control, that obsession is the most dangerous weapon of all. But the story doesn't end there. Because while Meghan's team worked to bury every trace of that tape, something else surfaced, an email. An email that seemed to reference the recording directly. Sent from an account under a pseudonym, it read, "If it leaks, we all go down." The recipient? Unknown. The sender? Traced back to a domain registered under a familiar name, the Weinstein Company. That single message reignited everything. Investigators reopened inquiries. Journalists started asking questions again. And the Duchess's carefully constructed narrative was once more in the crosshairs of suspicion. But who sent that email? Was it one of Weinstein's aides trying to clean up loose ends? Or was it someone else, someone far closer to Meghan's world than anyone imagined? Because according to metadata, that email wasn't sent from Hollywood. It was sent from Toronto. And Toronto was the city where Meghan spent years filming Suits. The city where she began to transition from actress to activist. The city where her rise truly began. Coincidence? or connection. The trail is murky, the evidence incomplete. But what's clear is this: the story of that recording, real or not, continues to haunt both sides of the narrative. And if the file ever resurfaces, if the unedited version is ever played in full, it could expose not just what happened that night at the Beverly Hilton, but what was set in motion because of it. Because the fallout didn't stop at the suite door. It rippled across continents, crossing the ocean from Los Angeles to London, from a mogul's empire to a royal household. And what came next wasn't just scandal, it was damage control on a royal scale. Because someone, somewhere inside the palace, got the call. A call warning that something from Meghan's Hollywood past had resurfaced. And when that call reached Prince Harry's ears, everything changed. What he learned next would ignite the first royal crisis of his marriage, and force Meghan to face the one truth she'd spent her entire career avoiding. But that part of the story belongs to the next chapter. Because when the palace gets involved, secrets don't just get buried, they get erased. And sometimes, erasure is the most dangerous confession of all. When the phone rang inside Clarence's house that morning, it wasn't from a diplomat, a journalist, or even a family friend. It was from a man in Los Angeles, an investigator who didn't know what world he had just stepped into. The voice on the other end was calm, polite, professional. He introduced himself as a consultant reviewing evidence from a sealed case in New York. Then, almost apologetically, he said it. "Your Royal Highness, there's a matter involving the Duchess that you might want to be aware of." The line went dead silent. Prince Harry had been through headlines before. He had endured scandal, invasion, humiliation. But this was different. This wasn't a tabloid hit piece or paparazzi gossip. This was something deeper, something buried in the legal and criminal underworld of Hollywood. The words Weinstein and recording hung like smoke in the air. "Impossible," Harry said at first. She barely even knew the man. That's what Meghan told him the first time her name ever surfaced alongside Weinstein's years earlier, back when whispers started online. She had laughed it off, calling it just another cheap attempt to make me a headline. And Harry, desperate to protect her, believed it. He always believed her. But now, a new version of the rumor had landed in the royal lap, complete with references to a mysterious dinner at the Beverly Hilton and a missing tape that allegedly connected her to one of Hollywood's darkest scandals. At first, Harry thought it was just another smear campaign. The monarchy had enemies, and Meghan had many more. But when the palace press office confirmed that several UK outlets had received anonymous tips referencing an unreleased Weinstein audio clip involving the Duchess of Sussex, the situation changed instantly. The royal family has one golden rule: when your name crosses into the realm of criminal investigation, even as rumor, control the narrative before the narrative controls you. By noon, a crisis meeting was scheduled. Inside Buckingham Palace, the air was tense. Aides shuffled papers, advisors whispered, and screens flickered with tabloid mock-ups that hadn't even gone to print yet. On one of those screens was Weinstein's quote, "We got intimate." King Charles, still weary from years of family turbulence, reportedly asked one question: "Is it real?" No one could answer. Meghan wasn't there. She was in California, half a world away, smiling for cameras during a charity appearance. But those who saw her that day said something seemed off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She kept checking her phone. She excused herself twice. When she finally returned to the stage, her tone was sharp, her charm mechanical. Back in London, palace officials debated how to respond. Some argued for silence, let it fade. Others insisted on preemptive denial. But silence had a cost, and denial had a risk. A senior aide reportedly warned, if this recording exists, even partially, it could be catastrophic. The monarchy cannot afford another scandal linked to Weinstein. And that's when they brought in a name no one expected, MI5's Media and Crisis Division. Now, most people think of MI5 as spies chasing terrorists. But within their network is a small, discreet team that handles reputational risk for high-level state figures. They don't erase the truth, they manage it. They make inconvenient facts less visible. One of those operatives, a woman known only as M, flew to California within 48 hours. Her mission was simple: verify whether any copies of the alleged dinner BH recording existed. What she discovered was more complicated. Through private digital forensics, M traced activity on servers previously linked to Weinstein's assistants. The data suggested that multiple copies of the file were backed up across at least 2 continents, one in New York, another in Toronto. Toronto. That was where Meghan had filmed Suits. Coincidence? Maybe. But to intelligence officers, coincidences are just uninvestigated patterns. M. discreetly met with Meghan's representatives. The meeting, according to leaked notes, was polite but tense. Meghan reportedly dismissed the idea of a recording, calling it ridiculous gossip. But when pressed about whether she had ever attended a dinner hosted by Weinstein, her tone changed. "I've been to hundreds of Hollywood dinners," she said. "You don't remember every face at the table." That was enough to make MI5 uneasy. Ambiguity, not guilt, is what destroys public figures.